All right, we're ready to go?
And recording, yes. Fantastic.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for participating with us today. This is the ninth webinar that ISSOP has had over the past 8 to 9 months on addressing the impact of the climate crisis on children. My name is Jeff Goldhagen. I'm a pediatrician at the University of Florida in Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm currently president of ISSOP, which is the International Society for Social Pediatrics and Child Health. For those of you who are not aware of who we are, what we are, we've been around for more than 4 decades and are quite proud of the fact that we are the only global organization that focuses on social pediatrics. And I think that there has never been a time in my tenure with the organization that I've been more proud of the work that we're doing in collaboration with the Royal College and other organizations around the world with respect to addressing the issues related to the climate crisis on children. As you know, we are coming live to you from Glasgow as well as other places at the end of a ride from Great Ormond Street to Glasgow. And I want to congratulate all the riders and thank them for their energy, their spirit, and what they've accomplished for all of us around the world who couldn't ride in the particular ride from London to Glasgow. So today we're going to hear from the riders. I'm going to turn it over in a moment to Tony Waterston. Those of you who know Tony know him to be iconic with respect to his commitment and work and energy and leadership as it relates to the issues related to climate change, as well as so many other social pediatrics issues over the decades. So I'm going to turn this over to Tony. At the end of the presentations, we will have time for question and answers, and then we will be breaking out into breakout sessions. There'll be one for the UK and another one for the rest of the world. If we have a lot of participants, we can actually open up some other breakout sessions, and look forward to your participation. I should say that it's the end of the ride, but the continuation of our global efforts in pediatrics and amongst our colleagues to address this critical issue. So we will be coming back to you in the very near future to engage you, to link you to our efforts. We need your energy, we need your passion, we need your expertise, and we need your leadership, and we need your voice all together to amplify all of ours if we are going to be successful in addressing the existential issues that climate change has on children. So with no further ado, let me thank you all again for participating. Let me thank the riders. And thank Tony for all of his great work over the years as it relates to climate change. And Mark Hayden, for sure, who was the person that really took the effort and really was the brains and the brawn behind the ride. So, Tony.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I won't repeat all the thanks to the many people who need thanks, but I'm just recovering from the most amazing experience of my life, having cycled only for 3 days, which is a very small amount in comparison to many of the ones that we'll hear from tonight. But it was a hugely beneficial exercise. And we're going to devote this webinar tonight to the voices of riders and associated riders to say what it meant to them. And I'm just going to start with 2 things. I'm going to say one thing about the pollution pods, because I know Mark is going to cover everything else. And I'm going to say one thing about COP, which I've been at today, at least on the periphery. We'll hear more perhaps from Courtney later about who's at the center. She's She's on the screen, and she's in the Blue Room, which is one of the centers of activity of the COP itself. But it's very exciting to be here in Glasgow and to hear what's being said about it. But I want to just put first on one of the things that our ride was linked with, which is air pollution. And I'm just going to share my screen. Oops, if I can get the right one. Right. It's okay. I always get the wrong screen here. Okay, here we go. Okay. Well, this is Camilla.
So there is an ambitious plan for a group of people who are passionate about child health to ride from London to Glasgow in a project called Ride for Their Lives. And this is about raising awareness of the impact of air pollution on child health. And I think for those of us that work with children day in, day out, this has really struck a chord. And with COP26 in just a few days' time, it feels like the right moment to be telling the world about what we believe is wrong with the quality of air and how much it's affecting children, because this is what we see in our day-to-day practice throughout the UK. So I'm fascinated by this, and there's something about using images to really bring a message home. And there's something about these pods representing different cities and actually sort of tangibly being able to see how different the air quality is in each, that really hits home. And I've noticed there are lots of children around today, and one would hope that the message would be sinking in for them too, that actually you can't take it for granted that air is clean, and that actually a lot of people are living in environments where the air is really polluted. And what does that do, not just for your asthma, but actually for your life chances, we know that what happens in childhood often sets the scene for adult onset of disease. And so it's really important that we focus on the child angle for this, because if we can intervene in childhood, we can actually prevent a lot of problems for adults later on in life. So I think there's a really important message that can be conveyed through these amazing pollution pods.
Okay, so that was just about the pollution pods, which came with us on the journey. And finally, I just wanted to give a quote from somebody who spoke at the COP this morning. She's an Amazonian young person, climate activist, called Chai Surui, and she gave a moving speech. And I just quote one sentence, which is, we must listen to the stars, the moon, the wind, the animals, and the trees. The earth is speaking. She tells us we have no more time. So I'll just pass over now to Mark to tell us a little bit more about the ride.
Thanks, Tony. Is the audio okay?
Yes.
Well, welcome everybody. I can't see everybody on the screen, so I don't know how many of the riders are there, but I know certainly some of you are, and I'm missing you all already. Thank you for coming along with us. And I guess what I'd like to talk about is why we did the ride. A little bit about how we did the ride, but more about why we did the ride. We've been thinking about it for about a year. Came out of a climate health emergency declaration by GOSH, and we wanted to do something active to enthuse other people, to encourage other people to take action. And the ride seemed like a good idea at the time, although it seemed like a very, very big undertaking. But in the end, it wasn't that difficult. The organization there was a lot of it, but it wasn't that difficult. Riding there wasn't that difficult, possibly because I've got a battery bike, but if I hadn't had a battery bike, I wouldn't have made it at all. So nothing that we did was insurmountable. Nothing that we did was particularly difficult. Nothing that we did was anywhere near as difficult as what we need to do, which is to get all of our colleagues in paediatrics and child health doing the same level of action. Everybody needs to be a climate activist if they're a pediatrician or any clinician looking after children, because as we've just heard from Tony, and as we know, the planet is on life support. It has limited time to do anything. I think it's pretty clear that COP's going to achieve not that much. I think at least part of that is around the UK's presidency of it. I think you have to be seen to be doing the right thing yourself. You have to be seen to taking action yourself, to get other people to collaborate with you. And I think that's why the ride was so successful, that we were making a significant action. We were doing a significant event ourselves, putting in significant effort. And I think that's what encouraged everybody. I think that's why everybody on the ride was so enthused, because people were being genuine, they're being real, they really meant what they were doing, and they were putting themselves on the line for that. And we just don't see that in politics, and I've seen very little of that around COP. So I think we have to take matters into our own hands, unless we're going to continue to rely on children like Greta and others to do the work for us, which seems fundamentally unfair, as we caused the problem. We need to take matters into our hands. We need to be the responsible adults. We need to start behaving like pediatricians, protecting the planet for our patients. So that's what the ride was about. I know Tony wanted me to talk about the ins and outs of it, and it was a wonderful event. You know, I will never forget it. And I'm going to take another 2 weeks to continue riding, because I think if I went back to normal life or tried to do normal work, or even went to COP, I don't think my brain would. I don't think it would cope. I need some space to ride off the ride. But the ride was there for a reason. It was to get pediatricians working together on all of the streams that are required, both our personal lives, whether we fly, what meat we eat, what cars we drive, all of those things matter. But much more important, we need to be advocating for our patients. We wouldn't tolerate children not having access to immunizations. We wouldn't tolerate children not having access to clean water, certainly in this country. So why do we tolerate them not having access to clean air? And why do we tolerate the continued funding of the fossil fuel industry, as we've seen only this week by a failure to increase fuel tax in the UK? So that's why I think it's really important to be genuine, to be candid, to be honest, and to do things in your life that represent your values. And I think that's probably why COP's going to fail, because the UK government isn't doing that. And therefore, the other governments are going, well, why should we try? I think in other COPs, things have been more successful. But I think we as paediatricians and child healthcare practitioners have an opportunity to do the right thing, have an opportunity to show other people that we're prepared to do the right thing and put our bodies on the line, protect the planet for our patients. And I really hope that this meeting and the ride is just the start of us really working together, advocating much more radically than we've done in the past, taking actions within our organizations that significantly reduce the carbon footprint and significantly reduce air pollution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. And thank you for your great leadership on the ride. Now, Toby's not here yet, and I think I would like to just put Finn, if that's okay, before Sarah, because I feel it's a bit hard on Sarah to be the first member of the ride to speak. So if I could ask you to go next, Finn, and Sarah, if it's all right, if you could go after Finn, and then we'll put Toby in when he comes. I think he did say he had a meeting and he's going to come out of that to join us. He was representing the young people from Great Ormond Street. So Finn, can I ask you to
Tony, just to say, I'm sorry to join late. It's Fiona Godlee here.
That's fine. I saw you there. I spotted your glasses, actually. So good to see you. Thank you. That's fine. We'll put you on. possibly after Sarah. Finn.
Hi, thanks for letting me join your meeting and to say something. So I'm Finn Craig, I'm one of the palliative care consultants at Great Ormond Street. And really, if I'm honest, I came on the ride because Mark Hayden said to me one day, fancy cycling to COP. I didn't know where COP is, and I have to be honest, I didn't really know what COP was. I didn't really think about it very much, but I like cycling, or at least I used to. So I said, yeah, that sounds fun, Mark. And to be honest, I didn't think we'd actually go anywhere. And then I discovered COP was in Scotland. So I was less enthusiastic, but I still thought that would be fun. But for me, it was a real opportunity to really educate myself much more about climate change. So I've always been one of those people where we live a pretty green life. We recycle, we prefer secondhand stuff to new stuff. We don't spend a lot of money on clothes. We've never flown on a family holiday. We hardly use the car. You know, we ride bikes. We recycle. I don't use, I always use a reusable cup. So I kind of thought we were doing everything we needed to do, and that we were, great on climate stuff. But it was really only through the preparing for the cycle and preparing for the message that I got really, really worried actually at how bad things are, because I don't think people really know, because people do think it's, well, so long as I, use an eco toothpaste and I've got the bamboo toothbrush, I'm doing enough. So it was a very steep learning curve for me, and really sort of a lot of very frightening information that I think people are just not aware of. Loads of my friends have said when they've looked at one of the videos I did, they had no idea. So I think one of the important things that we've done in the ride is start to get the message out, but we've got to get the message further and louder, and we've got to keep doing it. I think I agree with Mark. I feel very pessimistic about our governments making the right sort of changes, but on the other hand, with continued pressure, I think we have to hope that there will be enough changes at some point. And thinking about sort of, Tony, I know you asked me to sort of think about what we should all be doing next. And I think there's lots of things. I've seen, to be honest, I've seen a lot in the press recently saying, don't bother about a reusable cup, it's a much bigger issue. I agree it's a much bigger issue, but I still think you should bother about a reusable cup. And I think we need to do things on an individual basis. I think, I was really lucky. I was riding with Nick, our head of sustainability. And actually, there's loads we can do within our hospitals. And those can be examples that can be rolled out to other hospitals. And there's loads that other hospitals are doing that we can learn from. So I think, we do need to do things individually. We need to do things in our hospitals. I'm quite involved in our local politics. So our local council, our local Labour Party, but it can be any party. And actually, we've got council elections coming up. Now's a really good, in the UK, now's a really good opportunity to be lobbying our local councillors for real changes, because they're all coming up for re-election. So there's lots that we can be doing locally. And then I think there's obviously the bigger things, and it's thinking about what we can all do next. So I don't want it to end with the ride. I think for us as a group of, a group of riders, this needs to be the beginning. And I hope in the future we can look back and say, wow, remember when we thought that ride was a big deal? Look how much we've done since then. And that really was just the beginning. So I don't know what you've got planned next, Mark, but I'm expecting bigger and more demanding. But oh gosh, I'm shattered after the ride. So I think we could leave it a couple of months.
Yeah, Egypt's a lot further away, Finn. You're going to have to get in training.
I came home and asked, and my youngest has said no, I'm not going.
Okay, Finn, thank you very much. I hope shattered in a good way. But I think you were
I'm not sure.
I think you were one of the stars, and you didn't mention that you were in The Guardian because of your amazing ecological
But
championship. And you know, I try and be good on waste, but you are so much better. And
to be
I would
honest,
like,
it stemmed from originally. I mean, you know, my husband is older than me. He grew up with parents who lived through the war. You and my parents grew up not wealthy. You know, we live in a society where people just buy stuff. And, you know, I've grown up learning you don't buy stuff, you find stuff, you mend stuff, you get stuff that other people are throwing out and you fix it up. And often it's nicer than what you buy. You know, seriously, like my toaster broke. Okay, it's not an example of nicer. My toaster broke one morning. By that afternoon, I had found a toaster that someone was giving away. You know, you don't go down to John Lewis or Argos and buy a new one. You go on local recycling sites. You even put an ad out to your community. My toaster's broken, anyone got a spare one? This is how we need to live, and this is a nicer way of living as well. I meet so many people through the stuff I get for free. You know, I must have met 50 new people in the last, easily in the last 5 months. Yeah, 5 or 6 months, I've met 50 new people who have either come to collect stuff from me that I don't need anymore, or that are giving stuff to me that they don't need anymore. My bike lights were free because someone was throwing them out. Don't go out and buy new bike lights. Find some bike lights that somebody else doesn't want anymore. You know, we can all live like
yes, that's a fantastic message. And I think this passing of messages between people, and also not just between us, but giving us the idea that we have to pass these message on to 10 others when we get back, is something that came out of the ride. So, by the way, anybody is welcome to make comments. There's so many great people here, and do write in either comments or questions in the chat. So now I'd like to give the floor to Sarah, who is the youngest member of the ride, not a pediatrician perhaps yet, but the daughter of a pediatrician in Bristol. And I had the pleasure of riding quite a bit of the time on the first day with Sarah. So if I could hand over to you, Sarah, to say something about your experience and what you'd like to see happening.
Hi, I'm Sarah and I'm 17 years old and I go to school at Bottom. And I decided to take part in the ride because, well, technically my mum signed me up without telling me, but then we talked about it and I decided to do it because I feel like climate change is quite a big issue, and also air pollution. As I live like in Bristol, I cycle every day to school on one of like the worst polluted areas of Bristol, which is quite bad. And I feel like not many people are aware of how bad air pollution is because I wasn't aware. I only found out because I'm doing geography currently at school. And so I've decided to do the ride because I strongly believe that more people should be aware of how like bad it is, not just in the UK, but in other areas and other countries. And yeah, I only did one of the days from Newcastle to Carlisle, which was quite a challenge, but I was happy to take part, honestly, as I've never cycled that far, to be honest. It was good. And I feel like, especially for me, like at school, there's not really much talk on climate change and like air pollution. And I feel like that's something that can be more taught about, especially seeing as like kids like myself also we don't really understand unless we're properly told and explained like how bad it can really be. And I feel like if I was taught more about pollution and how bad it is and small things that one can do on a daily basis to help change would be very impactful for the future. And so, yeah, I was very happy to be a part of this ride and happy that everyone was nice and welcoming and allowed me to take part. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. And it was a real pleasure to have you there. And I think it was also very important that we did have young people to work with and to ride with, because that's what we're pushing for. And so therefore, I think it's appropriate if I could now turn to Camilla, if you would be able to go next, because I think Sarah was the youngest person. You're the person representing perhaps all the pediatricians in this country, and also came on a very hard day of the ride. And also, I must say, the college is doing amazing things at the moment. But it is your second bite of the cherry, because we put you on earlier. And also you've been on the webinar before. Anyway, very, very, very happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us. If you could give us your thoughts next.
Absolutely, Tony. Thank you very much indeed. So, I mean, I was motivated to join the ride because I'm actually from South Africa originally and go back as often as I can. And I'm from Cape Town, which is where I grew up. And between 2015 and 2018, Cape Town as a city essentially ran out of water, or came very, very close to running out of water, because there was a series of winters where there was little or no rainfall. And it was so shocking to recognize actually how this impacted on people's day-to-day lives. And of course, when, at our visits, when I went out with my family, you weren't allowed to flush the toilet. You couldn't shower for more than, I think, 90 seconds. There was certainly no question of having swimming pools. People couldn't water their gardens. And in fact, on many occasions, people were having to queue up at standpipes with bottles of water to collect their daily rations. And this is in a modern city. And it just had the most extraordinary impact on everybody's lives, and it stretched out over a couple of years. And the predictions for the impact on child health and well-being were just awful. And fortunately, the crisis was averted literally at the 11th hour, when the winter of 2018 miraculously produced some fantastic rainfall. But it really showed me how fragile our ecosystems are. And so, I find myself now in this very privileged position of being in a position of leadership as president of the Royal College. And despite feeling a bit unfit and poorly prepared, when colleagues of mine on the neonatal unit at the Evelina London Children's Hospital, which is where I work, approached me to join a few of them in taking part in the cycle ride, I just thought, I need to do this, because this is such a crucial issue. And I also felt that I needed to learn more, and so wanted to use this as an opportunity to really immerse myself more in this important subject. So I did one day, which was the Newcastle to Carlisle day 6. I have to say, two of my amazing colleagues, Zishan Rawn and Chinthika Piasina, did the whole ride, like Finn and Mark, which is just incredible. But I did feel really, really thrilled to do one day, and it was a brilliant experience. I mean, what are my expectations of COP? I mean, it's disappointing to say that I'm not sure I have very high expectations of it, and we should have high expectations of it, because this is such a crucial issue. The message I want to give COP is that human health needs to be at the center of all the interventions that are discussed and debated in addressing climate change, and that we have to collectively work to protect current and future generations of children. So I want to see child health right at the center of climate change policy. I think the climate crisis is a child rights crisis. We need to be demanding that resources are set aside to protect children, so that they can have clean water, clean air, affordable and nutritious food, housing, and so on. And we know that, that children are particularly vulnerable, particularly on the topic of air quality, which obviously was the main theme around the cycle ride, which I think it's so powerful, because as pediatricians, poor air quality affects 2 billion children on the planet. And so we have to be shouting loudly about the importance of moving away from our dependence, for instance, on fossil fuels. We need to think much more about how we, develop, climate resilient, low carbon and sustainable health and education services for children. And globally, we need to be making the case for children, particularly in some of the most disadvantaged parts of the globe, who actually have contributed the least to the climate crisis, but are, as I saw in Southern Africa, in my example in Cape Town, actually, the children are the most likely members of society to bear the brunt of the climate crisis. So I think, as child health professionals, we have a huge responsibility. I think we have personal responsibilities, and I love Finn's descriptions of actually how she's changed her life, because I do think each of us needs to look at our lives and think about, are there changes in our diets, changes in the way we travel and so on that we can do, that we can make. But actually, secondly, I think we also we need to be purposeful in how we educate ourselves about these issues, that actually we can make meaningful contributions to discussing this topic. Because health professionals, are actually highly regarded and respected, and the public do listen to us. So, we have an important role. And if we fail to engage, and if we fail to use our various opportunities to make the case, then actually we are stepping away from, I would suggest, our professional responsibilities. So I'm proud at the work that we've been doing at the Royal College. We're just at the beginning of a really important journey, and we're doing, we've had over 80 pediatricians join us on our climate change working group. We've got 5 work streams looking at a kind of a wide range of activities, from international child health to research to advocating for children and young people, and to the actual college itself, what's our carbon footprint and so on. So, I think we've got a lot to do. I'm delighted that we're seizing the opportunity right now to really get stuck into it. But I don't see this as a kind of a project that's going to have a finite lifespan. This is the beginning of a really important piece of work, which will thread its way through Royal College life, I hope, forever. Because sadly, I don't think we're going to fix this problem anytime soon. So I think that's what I would be challenging healthcare professionals to think more specifically about. But I have to say to Mark, the ride was outstandingly brilliantly organised, and actually, given where we've, the morale amongst doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals in this country is not very high at the moment, but the buzz and the camaraderie that I felt last Friday on that cycle ride really has made me come back to London feeling really excited about the future, and the fact that actually I've got brilliant colleagues and we're all in this together. So it's a real kind of call to action. Thanks, Tony.
Okay, thank you so much, Camilla, and we're most pleased that you were there, and look forward very much to working sincerely and genuinely with the RCPCH over the coming months. I'm just going to pass quickly to Fiona, because Fiona's battery is running out, and I'm very, very keen to hear from Fiona Godlee, who look as if you're in somewhere very important at the moment. Fiona is the editor-in-chief of the BMJ, with us for the final day. Fiona.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm actually at COP, so I hope you can hear me. And it's a very first world problem to have sort of running out of electricity in the middle of a climate conference. Anyway, I just briefly to say it was fantastic joining the ride. I joined because I had to get to Glasgow, so I thought, well, why not bicycle some of the way? It was quite a problem to get to the big start point of the last leg, and I had to do that in a slightly unenvironmentally friendly mechanism via a camper van. But we did get there, and I think really for me, it was wanting to put my body on the line, if that doesn't sound too anatomical. You know, I do a lot of writing and I do a lot of calling on other people to do things about climate change. And this was an opportunity to do something myself. And I have wanted to go and get arrested, but I thought, well, while I'm editor of the VMJ, it wasn't quite fair on the journal. But I stepped down at the end of the year. So I think maybe arrests will be the next step. But the bike ride was wonderful. It was inspiring. It was energizing. It was quite hard at times, even though I was on a power-assisted bike. It was just a great opportunity to talk to people. And I think one of the things we've worried about in the climate movement for health is talking to each other too much and not talking to other people. But I just recognize also the power of talking to each other, because as others have said, it's about giving ourselves confidence to talk about this issue, which may not seem to be, you know, we weren't taught it in medical school. It's not mainstream healthcare, but this is the point. It is mainstream. We've got to make it mainstream. We've got to make it everybody's. Talk about it in a way that they feel confident doing. So for me, that was a really important message. And I think, as has been said, we are a trusted voice, so we can then begin to speak much more confidently externally to other people. And it's obviously health systems have got to change. And also we've got to try and seek climate justice. So it's a huge challenge we've got. Being here at COP is an extraordinary experience. I was at the Earth Summit in Rio. I think I said that at the end of the ride, 1992. That was the first UN framework convention, and you know what progress has been made. I just don't think enough, and it is a bit dispiriting at times. But there is, you know, there are a lot of people here who want to make change, and we've got to try and put faith in the process and give it as much support as we can. But as has also been said, in the meantime, we can all do our own thing. Sorry, my internet connection may be playing up. We can all do our own thing. We must do our own thing, both as individuals and as members of other organizations. And you know, the ride has really re-inspired me, so I'm so grateful to have been involved. And you know, I look forward to the next one, so please do keep me posted. Thank you so much, Tony, for all you're doing. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. Really great to be part of that.
Okay, thank you so much, Fiona. You've been a health climate leader for so long, longer than I can remember. And I have a picture of you that I use quite often in a group, a whole group, a march. It was a climate demo with a huge band of medics. That must be 20 years ago, I think. Anyway, it's a long time ago.
With a hospital bed.
Yes, with a bed.
Hospital bed.
Exactly. Anyway, great what you're doing with the
bed.
I'm sure you'll continue afterwards. Okay, I'm now going to pass over to Courtney, who's also in COP and is also running out of battery. So I don't know what's wrong with the COP, but it doesn't have any charging points. So Courtney, over to you now.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, it's such an honor to be presenting to you and speaking with you, Fiona. I'm a doctor in the subarctic in Canada. And when I first learned about climate change and health, it was a huge comfort to know that there were doctors on the other side of the world who were already kind of on it, because there wasn't anybody in Canada talking about it. And I was reading IPCC reports in a place that was already 3 degrees Celsius warmer than it was when an 80-year-old elder was born. And it was very lonely. And so voices like yours, like Andy Hames, like Anthony Costello's, meant a lot to me. So I'll just go through a quick slide deck. So I've since, that was about 10 years ago, and I've since done a lot of work with the Canadian Association of Physicians from the Environment, and I'm now the advocacy co-chair for the WHO Civil Society Working Group on Climate Change and Health. So I'm here to help develop the policy briefs and help train the advocates to lobby the negotiators and the decision makers from their countries to essentially use the health frame to increase overall ambition, and also to try to get some commitments to the WHO's program, which is asking people to sign on to commit to low carbon resilient health systems. So essentially, you know, when I first learned about climate change and health, my overall reaction was to tell everybody all the time about it in a very excited way. And I eventually realized that didn't work super well, and it was environmental campaigners who taught me what to do. So I'm going to just quickly share a little bit of what I've learned from them. So the first thing I've learned is that you need to be able to explain really, really quickly to people. I'm on the Canadian Medical Association board, and I managed to get this onto their strategic plan without them ever having had a proper presentation. I just couldn't get them to give me that time. So in 2-minute increments, which is all I got, it worked. And you'll probably often, all of you, find yourself in that position. So this is the best way I've found to get other physicians on board. So I describe a planetary health nest. So I start by saying, I went to school to become an emergency physician, thinking that's where health happens. And now I recognize that everything depends on the ecological determinants of health, which are the underpinning of everything. So soil, water, our climate allow us, if stable, to give rise to the social and structural determinants of health, the things that determine them, our financial systems, our education systems, the things that allow us to generate income. And if that's going really well, then we get to build the incredibly complex structures that are the high income country health systems we depend on, and we get to staff them and make sure they're well supplied. And this really is everything that is required for the pediatricians in your group to be able to go to the famous Great Ormond Street Hospital and do their work. And it was so humbling to me when I looked at studies across nations with Trevor Hancock from Canada to figure out what percentage of overall health status could be attributable to healthcare. And our best estimate was about 20% when we looked at different countries. And so I found that when I present this to other doctors, all of a sudden they're like, oh, climate change isn't just about heat. Climate change is about what I do every day, and something tweaks, and all of a sudden they're on board. So essentially this has been very, very helpful to me, presenting to policymakers, presenting to communities, presenting to physicians. And it's in the supplement of this Lancet Planetary Health article. And I often actually use my hands to make a nest, which seems to work pretty well. So you may find when I first started doing this, a lot of my audiences look like that. And I've realized that people only have a limited amount of time and mental health buffer to absorb this information. So after thousands of presentations on this, I ended up at a 30-70 ratio. And I actually mentioned that to Nick Watts at one point, and he turns out he's at the same. So we both independently come to about a 30% impact, 70% opportunity ratio. And I try to stick to that, whether I'm doing a pitch, a 2-minute elevator pitch, whether I'm on TV, whether I'm doing a policy brief, because I find that that's about what people can cope with. And even now, what I sometimes do is a 20% impact, 10% acknowledgement of the mental health impact of the information I just transmitted, so that they know that they're not alone in having those uncomfortable feelings. Because I find otherwise they basically, for the whole rest of my presentation, they're not really listening because they're having apocalyptic doom thoughts and they can't focus. So we do impact, 10% acknowledge that we're all sharing this and it's scary, and then 70% moving on to the next thing. So keep an eye on your audience, do a mental status exam essentially on a running basis. If they look like this, you need to switch it up. Before I figured this out, I just had to bake cookies for every presentation, and I would give them out when people looked like they wanted to jump off a cliff. This has saved me a lot of baking. And so you've probably already noticed this from I think one of the reasons this has been so successful is that it's a great story. And we know, and this is hard for those of us who spent our whole lives learning how to generate data and interpret data, but really, yes, hi. It's important to realize that stories stick and numbers numb. And the way this works the best is if you use the evidence as the core or the reason for the story. So it's an evidence-based target, and then tell a story to illustrate it. So you did that very well. So you had air pollution related data as the core of what you were doing, but then the story was around the pediatricians who are cycling. So I really encourage you to incorporate all of that into what you do next. So I arrived at my first board meeting of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. I essentially said, we need to solve climate change. And then the executive director, who's a well-known environmental campaigner in Canada, said, what's your target? And I was like, what do you mean, what's your target? And he said, you need a target, Cordy. And I said, I don't need a target. I had a little bit of probably unearned physician-like, uppityness, and he was absolutely right. And so what I've realized now is that the most successful things I've ever done were when we picked an evidence-based target that was the most ambitious possible target, that the team that I was operating with could potentially accomplish. So a good target is one when you tell people you're going to do it, and you probably saw this with your ride, they get kind of an excited look in their eyes because they can picture the change that will make in the world. So things that have worked for us were getting the Canadian Medical Association to divest from fossil fuels, which I know the British Medical Association has already done, working on coal phase out, getting a Canadian coal power phase out commitment, these kinds of things, and then telling a story that talks about how we're going to keep children out of the emergency department with asthma exacerbations, et cetera, having physician messengers in the media, wearing scrubs, et cetera, using a variety of tactics to win that. So commissioning polls, producing reports that have the data in order to illustrate the story, et cetera. And then what we found is that when we win stuff, and I think you guys can count this as a win, what you've noticed is now you got more people interested, right? So when I first started doing this, my approach was, I'm going to tell a lot of people about climate change. And my ask was often, please just do rounds at your hospital. I did that for 3 years, nothing happened. And then when I asked people to get the Canadian Medical Association to divest from fossil fuels, they got that look in their eyes, they jumped on the bandwagon, and all of a sudden we had a movement. So oddly, sometimes the more ambitious thing is actually more effective. And now that you've got this bigger team, you now have more resources at your disposal than you had when you started. You can pick an even bigger target and use tactics and learn the skill sets of advocacy to help you. And so good targets tend to be ones with a health co-benefit, just like what you've identified. So empowering women, supporting women and girls to access education and the family planning that they tell us that they want is a good one. Other ones, anything that decreases air pollution. So phasing out coal-fired power, transitioning to zero emissions vehicles. We know this has worked really well for us in Canada. You can see that this is the current president of CAPE, Joe Vipond. He's wearing scrubs on TV. That's not because he sprinted from the emergency department. That is a very purposeful use of costume in order to enhance the health messenger frame, which we know is an extremely trusted frame. So that's visual communication used very strategically. And so we did manage to help Canada achieve an accelerated coal power phase out, which allowed us to co-found the Powering Past Coal Alliance with you because you've done some excellent work on that. And one of the other things that our board member, Eric Notebart, did was advocate for a change to the cycling structure within Montreal. So he, with some environmental engineering students, mapped out the intersections in Montreal where the cyclists were having the most injuries, and then proposed an alternative network. And she just said yes. So essentially doubled the number of bike lanes in Montreal. And he then got commissioned to do a similar study in multiple different jurisdictions in Quebec. And we're just doing one in Vancouver right now. And I asked him how he did it before he did that study. And he said, you have to be, in French, incontournable, you have to be unavoidable. So a lot of this is about showing up and creating that trusted relationship with the decision maker. Don't be surprised if they don't do what you asked the first time. You might have to go back and back and back. And that's the process it takes to develop, you know, if you will, a decision maker, change maker relationship, not unlike the doctor-patient relationship, that then will have enough trust associated with it for that person to do as you ask, to follow your prescription. Another thing that worked really well in Canada was a doctor, an amazing doctor named Jane Philpott, ran for office. It was her very first time. She ended up being Minister of Health. And then it was right when we were doing our national food strategy. And so she put up her sharp elbows and told Health Canada that they weren't going to have any closed door meetings with decision makers with lobbyists from industry, from the food and beverage industry or the dairy industry or the meat industry. What happened was they conducted an evidence-based process because of that. And this photo is of Brent Loken, who at the time was the scientific director of the Lancet Commission, showing the product right before it was about to be launched of the Lancet plate to the deputy of Catherine McKenna at that time at COP a couple of years ago, who had previously seen our food guide and knew what it looked like. And they looked exactly the same. And the reason they looked exactly the same was because they'd done an evidence review essentially and just been able to provide what was best for the planet and for people instead of being biased by industry. And so we've actually just called for a similar process to be taken in Canada when it comes to fossil fuel related policy, because we've seen that allows for a much better policy to be developed. So these are some of the things we've done. Of course, you know, you're leading in the NHS in terms of decarbonizing healthcare. We're trying to do that in Canada as well. You're right that leading by example is very, very important. Thinking about your change making on the micro or individual scale, community scale, and national scale, and you'll see that it all adds up to essentially assist and remove psychological and structural barriers to work and change at the other level. So I'd encourage you to think at multiple levels simultaneously. This is the young Nick Watts. I love this quote. He used to say, "We're too young to know what's impossible, so we do it anyway." And I would encourage you all to be young at heart. Think big. You've done a great thing. You've got a great team. Pediatricians, protecting child health is actually the absolute strongest communication frame to use according to the evidence. So I think there's incredible things to come. And I just really thank you for your work. There were so many times during the handovers that were posted on Twitter that I got teary. So it was very inspiring to me on my way here. And I think we'll be able to use some of that energy to increase ambition here at COP.
Okay, Courtney, thank you so much. That's a great presentation, and we'd like to make use of that, if we may, your slides. That would be most helpful. And your experience and relevance to our cause is very important. So we've only got 10 minutes, but we've got still possibly 3 speakers. So I hope it's okay to go a few minutes beyond the time before the breakout room. I'm not taking no for an answer. But I wanted to check. I don't think Toby is here yet. But if Toby is here, could you please unmute and say hello? If not, then I'm going to just ask Rachel, who is on the train, but is very keen. Rachel is a green physiotherapy champion from Great Ormond Street Hospital. So Rachel, if, I know you're speeding south from Glasgow. If you're able to speak, then please join us now. Okay, I think Rachel may not be able. Oh, Rachel, are you able to unmute, Rachel? I did have a wee chat message with Rachel, but I think it's possible she's going through a tunnel at the moment. So it's very difficult on the train. I know one of our members keeps doing Zooms from his car, but it's better to do it from a train, but it may not be possible. So I'm now going to, whilst we wait to see, I've got 2 recordings. One is from Christine. I'll go for that first. I will need to share my screen if I can find the right place for it. Right, okay, here we are. Yeah, that's it. Share screen. Okay. Christine was a French pediatrician who joined us on the ride, for the whole ride. And she explained here what that was about.
Hello, I'm Christine. I'm a primary care pediatrician from France. Normally, I work in Alsace. As I'm recording this message, I get prepared to write the last leg of the Ride for the Lives from Lechmargo to Glasgow. It's actually via the ISSOP webinar series on climate change that I've learned about this Ride for the Lives. And I thought that it was really a good opportunity to reach a broader public with our health messages about climate change. As pediatric healthcare professionals, I think it's really our responsibility to ring the alarm bell and about the health consequences of climate change. And I don't think up to now that people really understand the gravity and the irreversibility of what is going on. And there's many people now that have started to change habits, but it's not just about individual behaviors. I think it's really about transformational structural change. And we need our governments to take meaningful action now. I hope that as a child health care worker, we are trusted messengers, that children and young people, they can rely on us for defending their right to a healthy planet. I think this COP is a crucial moment. Children are uniquely vulnerable, and they rely on us to attain optimal physical, mental, social health and well-being. It is, in my opinion, our ethical duty to act on this planetary emergency. So let me say a few words about what I'd like to see happen. First of all, I would like us all to team up. These past days have shown us that you can do incredible things as a group. I would have never gone from London to Glasgow all on my own on a bike in just a week, and would have never made it. Just imagine all health workers, parents and grandparents standing together to protect the future of the children. I think that there could be really enough momentum for governments to change. Second, I think people generally are rather reluctant to change. They might get anxious when we speak about transformation. And I think we really have to put the positive health messages at the center of our communication. How amazing it would be to breathe fresh air, to be able to share healthy and fresh meals rather than food that is highly transformed and contaminated by endocrine disrupting chemicals that make us sick, obese, and impair cognitive development. How fantastic it would be for everybody to have easy access to the natural environment, to natural spaces, to have good water quality, to have protection from the heat and from extreme weather events. This ride has also shown that even despite sometimes suboptimal conditions, active mobility can make us so much happier and the life of children so much safer. Why should we all continue to be sitting in metal boxes to get from one place to the other? I think developing public transport, getting containers on trains rather than on trucks, and development of pedestrian and cyclist infrastructures should be at the heart of all transport policies. Of course, there's situations where some of us still need a car, but do we need to have them standing around in the street everywhere at all times? I guess it's as with the anti-smoking laws. At first, these changes meet lots of anger and reluctance, but once the policies has been implicated, most people agree that it has actually made life much better. I would also wish for society to put more value on things, to have less but better stuff that lasts, to have repair cafe exchange places for things we don't need anymore, but that are could still be useful for others. I mean, all of this may sound utopic, and others would say, oh, then Many people would lose their job and take to the street. But there is actually so much work to do in the health sector, in social sector, in education. All of these areas are chronically underfunded. I would be so happy to be able to share my workload with 3 other people and have some time for reading or going out in the nature and things like that. Of course, that will cost government money, but right now they are paying subsidies to harmful industries. And there's so many rich people not paying their fair share of taxes now. So I believe we could do much, much better. So in the end, I think we should start a real discussion about values and societal changes, putting children and equity at the very heart of our considerations. All of that sounds quite impossible, but remember, I thought this ride was impossible, and it happened, and we all made it or we have almost made it to Glasgow. So I think quite difficult things can really succeed. So thank you all for your attention and your support. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, Christine. You were a great person to ride with. And Christine was representing the European primary care doctors, she's a primary care pediatrician, and she feels we can cooperate more in the future. That's for ISSOP. I've just got one more recording, which is from a very important person. I'm wondering, okay, I see Diarmid is here. Or perhaps I'll just call him in after this. But if I could ask, if I could put the recording on now for Katrina Meller. This is the last recording we have from the Royal College of Psychiatrists. I keep thinking child psychiatrists, but it's not. So here is Katrina. I hope you can see it.
Living in Bristol in the UK and working with Oxford Health NHS Foundation Trust. I'm speaking this morning from 30 miles outside Glasgow, and I can't believe we're nearly there. The week has passed in a blur. It's been such a different experience to my daily life. I've loved being outside every day, feeling close to how beautiful our land is, making strong friendships. And the weather so far has been pretty perfect, so I guess it's fair enough that today it's pouring with rain. It feels like we've moved through the seasons too. It was mild and the leaves were mostly green around London, and the air's become crisper, and now golden leaves fall on us as we ride. And yesterday there was definitely a tinge of wintry temperatures in the air. It's been strangely relaxing to have such a clear goal each day, and time's taken on a really strange quality. I think we're all aching, our muscles are sore, but there's really been lots of food for the soul on this journey. The reason I joined the ride is to add my voice to what we're saying on behalf of the healthcare community. That air pollution and the eco-crisis are harming and killing the children of this world, and really importantly that it doesn't have to be this way. The ride shows that there are people to join together with who are committed to changing things for the better, and that is possible. There were 2 other bits to my motivation also. It was partly to bring the mental health perspective to the message, so raising awareness about the direct and indirect, really far-reaching impacts on mental health, the climate, ecological crisis, and also to shine a light on the global and growing distress and pain that people are feeling about the state of our planet and our collective inaction, what some people call eco-anxiety, climate anxiety, or eco-distress. I also hope that this is one of many, but is also a signal to children and young people who we know are feeling betrayed and dismissed or ignored in their fears for the future, that there are many adults who understand the urgency and severity of our climate and nature crisis, and importantly, who care what happens next. So after COP26, I think we need to do more of the same, continue to use our united healthcare voice to maintain the pressure for drastic and just action on climate and nature. I think we've modelled a really productive cross-disciplinary, cross-generational approach on this ride, which needs to continue as we face this kind of new, enormous, complex threat to our species. So for example, on the second day, I think it was, my cycle group of 8 of us included an occupational therapist, a parent counsellor, a diabetes nurse, a Welsh paediatric trainee, a community paediatrician from France, and me, a child psychiatrist. So, and this idea of different hospitals, different countries, different professions coming together with this same motivation, and asking the same question, where do I and my skills and experience fit in all this, has really felt that that's a really productive approach where the change sort of takes on, the change that's possible takes on a life of its own. And like, I suppose, with the eco crisis on this ride, we've seen that we all have a unique role to play. We're bringing our own perspective and skills, and together we've been able to do things that would have been impossible alone. One small part of what happens next, the riders have started a group on Slack entitled What Happens Next. So I'm sure that seeds that have been sown on the ride and connections and ideas and collaborations will continue to grow into the future. And maybe we're not yet aware of the impact of what we've been doing and how things will change depending on this, but everyone has spoken about the change they've already seen in their friends and family, or even members of the public, because we've been involved in this ride and we've been talking really openly about the issue of air pollution and climate crisis. So hopefully this has done something to move the conversation around the issue forwards. And it should now be clear, I think, that healthcare professionals and child healthcare professionals are aware, they're mobilised, and we're watching decision makers. But I think, certainly speaking from a UK perspective, we need the policies and structures and support in place for all healthcare professionals to feel able to speak up and act to make changes. So, I mean, I guess that means each trust and college needs people with dedicated time and resource to prioritise this and to start rolling out training. And resources to support their staff to make the changes necessary. And I think this would need some form of networking and communication between groups to make sure we're not duplicating where that's unnecessary. We need to continue to raise awareness through amongst healthcare professionals, because I think a lot of people are busy focusing on other issues, which needs to happen, but that this also needs to be something that all healthcare professionals are aware of. And yeah, the training about the impacts, also solutions, needs to be rolled out, including, I think, the emotional and mental health impacts. So, and on that, I think we can all contribute to and share resources, guidance, and support on how to navigate the complex and distressing emotional landscape of living at this time and living into the future for children, young people, and ourselves, to enable us to share that challenging side with each other, alongside keeping the action and the hope and the connections alive as well.
Right, thank you very much to Katrina, who was a great colleague, and it's another great connection that we've made. Now, I do have one final speaker who I'm very glad has joined us, and I think is a very suitable one to end with. It's Dermot Campbell, I keep forgetting that second name, is Dermot Campbell Lendrum. Lendrum, who is the climate lead at WHO, and who rode, I believe, all the way from Geneva to London, and then in the first day of the ride. So I guess you're here at the moment in Glasgow, Campbell, but do please join, Dermot, do please tell us something about your view about this all.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for inviting me to say a few words. It's a real pleasure. And also just thanks for inviting WHO to get involved in this at all. We first heard about this maybe 3 months ago, when Mark and colleagues contacted us, I think just to ask if WHO could give a bit of blessing and encouragement for the ride. And we immediately thought it was just a brilliant idea, for all of the reasons that have just been outlined on by the other presenters, that it's absolutely true. The evidence shows that the most trusted voices in society as a whole are health workers. The only thing that beats doctors is nurses. And when you then tie that to this very clear appeal for planetary protection in order to protect the health of current and future children, that's an absolutely powerful message. So it was clear from the start to us that this was a brilliant plan, and that we should do what we could to support it. And the organisation was obviously also fantastic. To get that number of people to do that in linking up with the pollution pods was just a really a real feat, I think. So I'd really like to compliment Mark and all of the people who are involved in the organisation. That was an absolute triumph. And then from our side, I mean, we love working with people like you, not only for this kind of brilliant, slightly crazy initiative, but because you are frontline health workers, and at WHO we are boring UN bureaucrats, but we know who our team is, and we know who we want to back up and support. And I would say also in our team, we are up for anything. So we'll find a way to make the system work. So yeah, we were able to react quite quickly, and it was easy for me to, once I got permission to get a week permission from the family and my bosses to organise myself to cycle from Geneva to London, and was then able to get Dr. Tedros to physically sign the letter, which has been signed on behalf of organisations representing 45 million healthcare workers, and the report that we had just launched, WHO and the wider health community. So there was a sort of a physical signal coming from Geneva to London to then be passed on to Glasgow. But I would say that we were entirely sort of opportunistic in piggybacking and supporting the brilliant work that's been done by this team. And I think that the final thing from my side is that I do think that it's entirely complementary. I do think you do have the most powerful voice that there is. I can do nothing but encourage you to carry on speaking up, to carry on working together, because I'm about to launch back into COP, and have been to too many COPs, and you're right, the progress is too slow. But one of the things that encourages me is that those messages that we're hearing in the earlier presentations are things that the community on climate change and health has been saying for a while, more or less, but to have that power of the amplification of frontline health professionals linking out, discovering these things, linking them up, mutually reinforcing each other is, I think, absolutely the most powerful argument that we have. So it's been hugely encouraging for me to be involved with this. And although I had a really enjoyable ride from Geneva to London, the best day was definitely the day that I got to ride with your group. And I'm sure you had a fantastic time with the rest of the ride. And yeah, we'll be looking forward to linking up with whatever madcap scheme Mark or anybody else comes up with next. Thanks to everybody, and back over to you.
Thank you so much, Dermot. That was great to have you with us. Right, so I'd like to just hand over now to Jeff and Eva to explain what's going to happen next, if I may.
Can I just point out that Rachel's put her contribution in the chat because of her.
Oh, right. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Lucy.
Well, this has been more than inspiring, as I said from the beginning. I've been involved with ISSOP for a number of years. I don't know that there's been a more proud moment for me, in particular, to be part of this organization. There's a common theme that came out throughout the presentations, and that's the need to work together. And over these past 8 months or so, one of the issues that has come up over and over and over again is the need for pediatric organizations, pediatricians, to come together as a force. Although there are a number of organizations focused on health and climate change, there's none currently that have brought together all of the pediatric organizations around the world to have a common voice. So one of the challenges we have in front of us now is really to put together a consortium of pediatricians and pediatric organizations focused on climate change, focused on the crisis, focused on planetary health, and so on. So as we move forward, looking toward the future, certainly the Royal College, ISSOP, the Academy of Pediatrics, ISPCAN, IPA, and others will be taking a lead in organizing a global consortium so that our voice is stronger together. So at this point in time, what we'd like to do is break out into breakout rooms. And so there will be 4 or so breakout rooms, one for the UK, one for Europe and Africa, one for North America, and one for Latin America. And Eva tells me that this is easily done. And so Eva will put those up, and people can identify which room they want to go into. There'll be moderators in each of those, and the intent is to really begin to plot a path forward. Each of those breakout rooms will be recorded, as was this, so that we'll be able to archive this and go back and really pick out the critical nuggets of information that we want to focus on. So let me finish by thanking Mark in particular, thanking all of the writers, thanking Tony, and all of the participants here today. As we've said from the beginning, that this is the beginning, not the end of the ride, but the beginning of a journey together. So having said that, let me again thank you, and thank Eva for her technical support, and thank ISSOP for all of the support that they've given us over the months and years.
Thank you, Jeff. Just about the breakout rooms, we won't go longer than 7 p.m. GMT, but I can't see, Eva, I can't see the groups you mentioned. On the breakout rooms, I can just see a list of all the members of the audience here.
Right, so that means you have the unassigned clicked down. If you keep scrolling down, you should see unassigned and then North America, UK,
oh,
Europe, and Africa.
I see. Okay, yeah, I see. Okay.
If you aren't able to join one, I can always assign you to one, but they're open now, so you can feel free to go ahead and join.
So if you scroll down to the bottom and join, you click on where it says 0 at the moment, beside the country.
It should know. There's North America, UK, Europe, and Africa, and Latin America. And it should say join.
Sorry,
if it doesn't, I can also add you.
I don't see anything. What, next to reactions and record and share somewhere there? Should there be something?
No, I think if you go down to breakout rooms, Eva, do they need to open up breakout rooms?
Yes.
I don't see it either. I don't see it this time.
I don't have anything saying breakout rooms. Is it somewhere by participants or where?
It's at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I see reactions. I see.
ISSOP webinar we've had, I've had breakout rooms at the bottom, but this time,
Yeah.
no. It's not
I
there.
don't see it either.
Okay, well, I can then just
see
go
it.
ahead and assign.
I'm supposed to moderate the European group, I gather.
Yes.
Yeah, no, yeah, Raul cannot see it either.
Okay, let me go ahead and do it.
I don't know what happened. Usually we see it where you're supposed to see it. Okay, now.
I'm not sure if people understand that you have to click on where it says breakout rooms at the bottom.
Only if it says breakout rooms.
I think there's variance, Tony, and it may be around like different devices or something, but
It also matters if you
a lot of
have
people
a new
don't have
version.
breakout rooms, so I'm happy to be allocated.
I don't have it either. And I think 'cause I'm
Okay,
doing it
if
on
you
my
just
phone.
go
Nor
ahead
do
and
I.
let me know which room you'd like to be in, then I
You're
can,
going
if you
down
just
the
put it
list.
in the chat.
Eva, perhaps if almost everybody's in the UK, maybe we should just have one other for the rest of us.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. I would say that the UK is grossly overrepresented in this meeting.
Yes. So